Well, he bats leadoff when it comes to Dodgers coverage at AM 570 LA Sports. He's the host of Dodger Talk, Dodger Insider on the network. He's also on television. He's all over the place in Los Angeles. It is David Vassegh. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor for Fox Sports Radio, and you can follow David on Twitter at @thereal_DV. David, how many unreal David Vasseghs are there?
Well, I started that as a joke. When
Did
Twitter
you?
first started, I saw these athletes saying the real Shaq, the real Alonzo Mourning, whoever. So I said, I'm just I don't take Twitter that seriously, especially at that time. So I was mocking everybody having a reel, and people now think I take myself too seriously. No, I was making fun of you. And then there were a couple of parody accounts that have popped up over the years. So yeah, I guess it's good that I do have a reel, because there are 3 or 4 imposters out there.
I'm wondering if any of those accounts are burner accounts, but I'm pretty sure you don't have a burner account. How
No.
many how many times over the course of your career, David, through your launch and where you've reached today, have you gotten a no? And then what did it feel like to eventually turn that into a yes?
Well, yeah, Brian, I had a lot of no's, especially early on in my career, because I never left Los Angeles. I'm born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. Family is a big deal to me. So I chose to stay home and take a longer path to get to where I'm at. And I started as an intern at a radio station that was above Hot Dog on a Stick that Jim Rome
Wow.
made famous in the Fallbrook Mall, if you know about it, in West Hills.
Wow.
I just knocked on the door while I was in college. And, I thought it would be a bigger process to get an internship, but I knocked on the door and it opened. And Steve Paylett was the station manager, and he said, sure. And at first he told me I was going to work on another show, the Sports God show. And I said, you know what? I actually wanted to work with Joe McDonnell. And that's why I was knocking on this door. So he allowed me to intern on Joe's show. From there, Joe and I formed a really great working relationship, and it turned into a really great friendship and a mentorship early on in my career. So that's how I started. And from there, I went with Joe to what was 1150, which is now 570.
Sure.
Went to ESPN Radio. I was one of the first 3 employees hired at ESPN Radio Los Angeles.
Wow.
So yeah, that was my starting point. And I found a home at AM 570 back in 2004, and here I am getting ready for my 10th season hosting Dodger Talk.
Unreal. And before or early on in your tenure at 570, you were a producer, right, for Petros and Money. And when I had Tim Cates on, he attributed a lot of the success that he's had to you and the way that you mentored him. So I must ask you, why are you better at being a producer than he is at that role?
Wow. I don't know. It's interesting how that happened, because when I came back to 570 in 2004, I was hired as an on-air reporter. I was their reporter, breaking stories, going to, doing everything I do now with the Dodgers, but for every team in Los Angeles. And one day I was in studio for an in-person report with Petros and Money. I can't remember what the story was, but they were having a huge blow-up argument with their producer at the time. And I was sitting there, very awkward. It's like when your parents are arguing and you're just sitting there like, please, please stop. And
sure.
the producer was very flippant in his responses to Money in particular. And he said something that set him off. And coincidentally, our station manager, Don Martin, walked in right after that. And I walked back with him to his office as he called HR to put the wheels in motion. And they needed a producer, and I needed extra money. So I said, hey, I could produce and still be your field reporter. I would leave the show. I would get the show set up, and then I would leave for a Laker game, a Laker practice, or I'd go to a Laker practice and come back. And that's how the show functioned. So that I was doing 2 jobs at the same time, because my primary job was being a reporter. And I saw an opportunity to try to help grow myself and my pockets and produce Petros and Money show. And it worked out for the best.
No question. We're talking with David Vassegh with AM 570. I'm Bryan Fenley. How did your time as a producer help you as a broadcaster?
Well, it just helps you be self-sufficient. You don't have to rely on anybody. I know how to, download my interviews. I know how to work a recorder. I don't need a producer to help me get a guest on the show. I form my own relationships, and you're just you're equipped to do things on your own and not rely on anybody. I welcome ideas from my producer Dwayne McDonald and Colin Yee, but really, I love having the creative control over what direction I'm going to take every show, what decisions I'm going to make on a pregame show, and the stories. So, it's just a reporter is in my blood. I just have had that. So I know what the story is. And I think that helps ease the burden on my producers because they don't have to be responsible for me. They know I could be responsible for myself. So I'm very thankful that I did take that route because I'm self-sufficient.
What's a fun exchange that you've had between yourself and Petros and Money? One that really stands out. Maybe it was a verbal spat, but in a playful way. It wasn't anything that was harsh feelings felt, but something that was funny and or comedy gold that you recall on the air.
On the air. Wow. I was going to tell you some stuff off the air,
Well,
Bryan.
either way, I'm down for either way. Yeah.
Well, how about if I start off the air because you
Perfect.
can't get that. So the one trip I'll always remember being part of the Petros and Money show was when they were national. They sent us to the Super Bowl in Miami. So we all went to the Super Bowl in Miami. I rented the car in Fort Lauderdale where the convention center was. So I would drive us from Miami, from South Beach to the convention center. And that's one. Number two, there was this, our hotel was called the Budweiser Hotel. So they had available Budweisers and Bud Lights in these large coolers that you would see at a liquor store. You could just open it up and start drinking whenever you wanted at this hotel.
Jeez.
So obviously Petros and Money are not going to miss out on that opportunity. They would go on the air drunk after drinking these Bud Lights, for an hour, 2 hours before the show, during the show. And whoever was the station manager at Fox Sports Radio, or I guess like operations manager, was
Sure.
You can't drink on the air. You can't drink on the air. They're like, yes, we can. Watch us. They start drinking. And that's after shows and stuff, I would hang out with Petros and his wife, who was on the trip with him, and we go up to their room, third wheel, Dave Vassegh in the room, and hang out some more. And that's where he unveiled his CPAP mask. Oh, what is that? He looked like he was in a bantha tank from Star Wars when he was getting ready for bed. I said, I think this is the time I should leave.
That is absolutely hilarious. The thing I love about Petros and Money is it's become such a household name in Los Angeles, and to see how it's grown and how well those two work together. Why are you not surprised with the success that it's had and how big it's become in the area?
Yeah, just because of the longevity. They've been fortunate to have a boss that really believes in their show and isn't going to pull the plug on them after one or two bad ratings books. It's the ebbs and flows, but they have the support of the management at 570, and also they're creative. They're one of a kind. There's no show on sports radio or radio period that does what they do and just goes off on these different tangents and creative tangents. And the show has evolved to a certain point, but it has stayed true to what it was when they first started. So I think those are the biggest reasons why.
You are the dominating voice of Dodger news coverage, everything with the network. And if I'm getting my facts straight, did you go on your first date with your wife at Dodger Stadium? Is that did I no, okay.
No, I did not, but I set up our first date at Dodger Stadium.
You set up your first date.
Yeah, I set up. She was at the game with friends. I was at the game working, and I just told her, let's meet up. Let's meet up during the game, fifth inning or something. And it happened to be the same game that Clayton Kershaw made his major league debut, which will be 10 years this summer. So yeah, that, I didn't really care about her at that point. I just was so excited to see this kid, Clayton Kershaw. I
Yeah,
did something I never do that day, Brian. I actually walked down to the Dodger bullpen from where this, fan level is,
sure.
and watch Kershaw warm up before his opening day, his major league debut. That's how excited I was. That was the buzz around him. And yeah, that day I set up our first date. It went well. And I don't know if I've ever told Kershaw that story, but
You
maybe I
should.
will. Yeah.
Yeah. So that went well. Your career with the Dodgers is certainly going well. And how do you draw the line between you're a reporter, you're breaking news, but you also have these relationships in the clubhouse and you want to honor those as well? And so I'm sure that there are some things that, look, it's between you and the player, that's private. But at the same time, you have a duty to 570 and Dodgers fans to tell the stories. So, how do you sort of balance both of those entities together?
Yeah, well, honestly, Brian, I think the biggest thing is everybody with the Dodgers knows I don't have a bad intention in
Sure.
anything I'm reporting or what I get passionate about after a game. I have good intentions. I care about the franchise that
Yeah.
I grew up loving. So they know that. And number two, they know me. I've gotten to let them know what I'm about. So I think they understand whatever I'm saying, it's genuine, and I'm never going to put them in a bad spot. There are certain things that I do know that I am not going to report on because that's
Sure.
just not my role. As you know, being part of UCLA's broadcast crew for a while, you
Yeah.
understand that. So
Yeah.
that's the fine line. And honestly, the players have been tremendous with me, and I feel like part of that is because I'm trying to tell their story. I know there's a lot of misperceptions about players, certain players, and I've always tried to tell the truth and tell their truth story instead of having it told secondhand.
What is your takeaway after games when, let's say, you're fielding calls or like you want to be honest, but you also want to be fair to the club as well? So, because the listeners want you to say what you feel, but at the same time, you understand that you have relationships and you don't want to jeopardize those at all. So
Mhm.
when you take and you discuss this Dodger news with fans, phone calls or whatnot, how do you sort of approach that angle?
Yeah, well, number one, fans are going to call and say, fire the manager,
Sure.
fire the GM, release this guy, trade that guy. That's a fan. That's an emotional reaction after one game. And in my seat, I'm not a fan. I haven't been a fan for a long time. I do hope and I'm rooting for them to do well, to perform well, so I could talk a lot of good things about them. Because if they don't perform well, then I'm put in that position where the fans are not dumb, Brian. They've watched the game. They're watching the games. So it would be disingenuous for me to say, no, that's not the case. Well, we all saw what happened. It's my job to explain the player side, to explain the team side, and why that happened. Not just say what happened, but explain how and why it happened. And a lot of times, fans, and by no fault of theirs, don't know the backstory between what's going on from the stands to the field to the clubhouse. And I pride myself in understanding what a player may be going through, on why they missed a ball or an error was made or why they struck out 4 times, because a lot of times there's something more to why a player doesn't perform at the level that we've expected them to perform at. So that's my role. It's my role to not get too emotional, but to have passion in what I'm talking about. And the way I do that is having the facts. I feel very confident in everything I say after a game because I have the facts. And if I don't have the facts, I'm not going to guess. Uh, so that's why I feel confident every night when the show starts after a game in real time. I don't have a lot of time to prepare after a game,
Sure.
but I do know the backstory on why. And after a play happens in the middle of the game, I have some time to gather why. So that's why I feel confident in the seat I sit in. And a lot of times, I get called a homer, or sometimes the team feels like I've criticized too much. And that's when I know I'm doing a great job, because I can't win.
Yeah, for sure. The general public knows the backstory between the Dodgers and the Astros. And so last season, when we watched what Joe Kelly did on the mound, that one game against Houston, where he throws behind Correa and Bregman and creates this little scuffle, what was it like from your perspective seeing that? Because it felt like years and years of just frustration, and Joe Kelly, Dodgers fans were adopting him as a guy who stood up for the team. But I'm curious to hear your take away from that, and which took place in that game.
Well, number one, you felt the tension going into that series, going back to spring training when the Astros and their lack of punishment was sent down. A lot of Dodgers were outspoken. So you knew there was tension there no matter what anybody said leading into the series. Did I believe it was going to be Joe Kelly that did some sort of retaliation? No, I can't say I did, but it was made clear to me actually an inning after he threw behind Correa and made that face and really got things stirred up. It was made clear to me by one of his former teammates in Boston that told me that he had a lot of history with Correa and Bregman when he was pitching for the Red Sox. So this wasn't just about the Dodgers. It was about the Dodgers and Joe Kelly's resentment towards the Astros after they had to play them in the playoffs the year before, or 2018, when he was with the Red Sox.
That's fascinating. See, that's another angle to the story that I'm sure the typical sports fan might not know as far as digging deep into the research, but it shows you how emotionally responsive he was in the scenario, even though he wasn't on the Dodgers when they were having to deal with the Astros in those World Series, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right, but he had his own history pitching for the Red Sox against those guys, and that's what prompted him to have that type of emotion. And also, Joe Kelly is a guy that has no fear. If there's one guy that has the most edge in that bullpen, it's Joe Kelly. So I guess by all accounts, you wouldn't be too surprised knowing the backstory.
Yeah. Final question in David Vassegh. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. It's an honor to chat with you.
Have I been more generous than Petros?
Petros, yeah, Petros it's like
enough about me, more about me, right?
Yeah. He is, as you know, and you are just as well. Both of you are great storytellers. And that's why I literally love to be a sponge and just listen to the stories you guys tell. And when doing my research in sort of your background is that you two have had a really strong bond for a long time, and outside of the industry. And so, like, will you ever go to him for advice on life or things that are disconnected from the industry?
Oh yeah, all the time, Brian. I always call him if there's, we're friends. We're really close. We're really close off the air, and when it comes to work as well. But Petros is a unique guy. When I take shots at him on the air, I'm it's a, brother to brother kind of like passive aggressive, like this is the truth. There is a sweet spot where he will call me. He only makes calls between like 12:30 and 1:30 on his way to the radio station. So at any other time you want to communicate with Petros, Saturday, Sunday, forget it. During college football season, stay away from the guy. I don't even want to be friends with him during the college football season. So those are the personality traits that you understand. So you know when to expect. So right, at 1:30 or 1 o'clock today, there's a chance he may call me. But if I want to talk to him, like if there's a life or death situation, I have to preface it by texting him and saying, hey, this is a serious situation. Can I call you?
When I met, or when we did the interview with Petros, I met one of his kids, and
yeah,
it was fascinating. It was cool.
Do his kids like him?
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. It
He's
almost felt
dad.
like, who is this guy?
Yeah. He's like a teddy bear.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I met his son. His son looks more like Petros's wife.
Yeah, Fletcher,
Yeah,
definitely.
Fletcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully for him that he got his mom's look.
Oh,
So did his daughter.
oh my gosh. Yeah. No
Petros's
question.
dad's a good looking guy. His older brother, Tasso, great looking guy. His sister, great looking lady. His younger brother, Dimitri, it's a great looking family. He literally is the Danny DeVito in Twins of his family. There's no doubt about it.
The question is, does he accept that, or is he in denial of that?
No, he accepts it. He understands. He looks
Okay.
in the mirror every day. That's why he gets these big sunglasses and he gets a knife to a little pocket knife to show on Twitter. He's trying to distract from that.
Final question. Petros has kids. You have kids. What's advice that your kid or one of your kids has ever given you about, or even your wife? How about this? Something that your kid or your wife heard you say on the air, and they were like, "Why did you say that?" Or, "Don't you mean this?" Or, "You should say that." Does that ever come up in the household around the kitchen table?
Oh yeah, my wife is way smarter than I am. So she helps me word things a little bit more intelligently than I normally would. She is really smart. I can't believe she even, I have to try to like match her wits. She's teaching me chess right now. I don't know how to play chess. So
You don't know how to play
no,
chess.
never learned how to play chess. I was an outdoor kid, Brian.
All
Not messing
right,
around with chess.
that's fair.
I was hitting a tennis ball in the cul-de-sac when I was a kid, with a baseball bat.
With a baseball bat.
Yeah.
And now you're working in the game and doing incredible things. David, thanks so much for doing this. This has been an honor. Really appreciated the backstory. I know a lot of people are going to enjoy this because they listen to you on a regular basis. And with the season coming up in a couple months, we're going to hear even more from you and listen to you on 570. David Vassegh, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Brian. You do a great job, and thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome.